You tell yourself you just need more willpower, more discipline, more grit, a stronger version of yourself who doesn't cave by 9 p.m. That belief feels obvious. It feels like common sense. It is also, according to some of the most cited research in modern psychology, almost completely wrong. For decades, one idea ran the entire self-help industry. Willpower works like a muscle. Use it in the morning, resisting the donut in the break room, holding your temper in a meeting, and by evening, there's nothing left. You collapse onto the couch and eat the entire bag of chips because your willpower muscle is supposedly exhausted. This idea has a name: ego depletion. Coined by psychologist Roy Baumeister in the 1990s after a study where participants who resisted eating fresh baked cookies gave up faster on an unsolvable puzzle than participants who got to eat the cookies. Baumeister concluded that self-control draws from one limited tank of mental energy, and every act of resistance drains it a little more. For almost 20 years, this became psychological gospel. Hundreds of studies, thousands of citations, entire productivity books built around the idea that you should protect your willpower like a battery, spend it wisely, and never waste it on small decisions. Here's what nobody told you, though. Around 2010, other researchers started trying to replicate Baumeister's original findings, using bigger samples, tighter controls, better statistics, and the effect kept shrinking, then flickering, then in some of the largest attempts disappearing entirely. In 2016, a massive multi-lab replication project involving over 20 research teams around the world tried to reproduce the classic ego depletion effect under controlled conditions. The combined result was close to zero. Sit with that for a second. The scientific finding that convinced an entire generation to fear running out of willpower barely holds up when you actually test it carefully. So if your willpower isn't a muscle that empties out, why does it feel like it runs out by the end of the day? That's the real question. And the answer is stranger and honestly more useful than anything ego depletion ever offered. Psychologist Walter Mischel, the researcher behind the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment, spent decades studying self-control in children and later in adults. His conclusion wasn't that some people have a bigger willpower tank. It was that self-control isn't about raw resistance at all. It's about strategy. The children who waited longest for a second marshmallow weren't gritting their teeth harder. They were looking away, singing to themselves, turning a chair around so the marshmallow wasn't even in view. They weren't fighting temptation. They were engineering it out of existence. That reframes everything you thought you knew about your own bad nights. You think the reason you caved to the chips at 9 p.m. is that you used up some finite reserve of discipline earlier in the day? But research led by psychologist Michael Inzlicht and others points somewhere else entirely. What actually happens late in the day isn't depletion. It's a shift in motivation. Your brain starts weighing effort against reward differently as it gets tired, and it starts asking a very different question. Not, can I resist this? But is resisting this even worth it anymore? That's not a weaker version of you showing up. That's a completely rational, exhausted brain doing cost-benefit analysis and deciding the couch wins. Picture the actual moment. 10 p.m., laptop light. The only thing lighting your face, the specific dry click of the trackpad as you scroll past the thing you meant to do an hour ago. Nobody drained a tank. Your brain just quietly recalculated the math and decided the effort wasn't worth the payoff anymore. Here's the twist that undoes the whole muscle metaphor. If willpower doesn't run out, then the people who seem to have more of it aren't secretly stronger. Psychologist and behavioral scientist Angela Duckworth, known for her research on grit and self-control in high performers found something almost embarrassingly simple. People with strong self-control aren't resisting temptation more successfully. They're encountering less temptation to begin with. They structure their days, their environments, their default choices, so that the tempting option barely enters the equation. The person who never seems to struggle to skip dessert isn't white-knuckling their way past it every single night. They just don't keep it in the house. You've been grading yourself on a test you were never actually built to win. Gritting your teeth harder against temptation was never the winning strategy. It was the strategy of someone who hadn't yet realized the environment was the real battlefield. This isn't just an eating habit story either. The same research applies directly to money. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely has documented again and again that people don't overspend because they lack financial discipline in the moment. They overspend because the environment is engineered deliberately to make the impulsive choice the easy one. One-click checkout, saved card details, a notification that a sale ends tonight. None of that is a test of your inner strength. It's friction removed on one side and added on the other. And no amount of trying harder fixes a system built to beat you. So the next time you fail to resist something, whether it's a purchase, a snack, or an extra hour of scrolling, the honest question isn't, what's wrong with my discipline? It's, what did my environment just make effortless? That single reframe changes what you actually do about it. Instead of promising yourself again that tomorrow you'll have more willpower, you start asking a completely different question. What can I remove from view? What can I make one extra step harder to reach? What can I automate so the disciplined choice happens by default before your tired 9 p.m. brain even gets a vote? This is echoed in Baumeister's own later work, ironically. After the replication crisis forced a reckoning, Baumeister himself, along with researcher Kathleen Vose, revised the model. Their newer framing treats self-control less like a muscle and more like a limited attention resource shaped heavily by motivation, belief, and environment, not a simple battery ticking down toward zero. Even the man who coined ego depletion moved away from the muscle metaphor once the evidence stopped supporting it. So no, you don't need more willpower. You were never actually short on it in the first place. What you were short on was a system, a set of defaults that don't require you to win a fight against your own brain every single night at the exact moment your brain is least equipped to win it. You reach for your phone before your eyes are even fully open, and by the time willpower would even matter, the decision has already been made for you by whatever you set up the night before. That's not a character flaw. That's design. And design is something you can actually change. Think about the last time you actually succeeded at something hard. A habit you kept for months. A goal you didn't quit on. Ask yourself honestly whether that streak survived because you fought harder than usual or because at some point you stopped relying on the fight at all. Most people, when they look closely, find the second answer. The gym clothes were already laid out. The junk food was never bought in the first place. The phone charged overnight in the kitchen instead of on the nightstand. None of that required an ounce of extra grit. It required one small decision made once ahead of time when your brain wasn't tired and wasn't negotiating. That's the part almost nobody tells you about self-control. The moment that actually matters isn't the moment of temptation. By the time you're standing in front of the fridge at 10 p.m., the outcome is already mostly decided by choices you made hours or days earlier. Trying to win the fight in that exact moment is like showing up to take a test you never studied for and hoping adrenaline carries you through. There's a reason this myth was so easy to believe for so long, too. The muscle metaphor is comforting in a strange way. It gives you a villain, your own weakness, and a simple fix. Try harder tomorrow. Blaming a lack of discipline feels almost noble. It suggests that if you just gritted your teeth a little more, you'd have won. Blaming your environment feels less satisfying because it means the fix isn't about becoming a stronger person. It's about becoming a slightly more strategic one. But strategic beats strong every single time. The data has actually been tested. Look at how this plays out with money, specifically, because it's one of the clearest examples. Nobody opens a spending app planning to blow their budget. The moment usually looks almost identical every time. A notification, a countdown timer on a sale, a saved card that turns a 5-second decision into a one-tap one. Ariely's research on this is blunt about it. Reduce the number of steps between impulse and purchase, and self-control becomes almost irrelevant, no matter how disciplined the person is. Increase the steps, even by a little, even just removing a saved card or logging out, and the same weak-willed person suddenly makes a completely different choice. Same brain, same discipline, different friction, different outcome. That's the pattern researchers keep finding across food, money, screen time, and nearly every other domain of self-control ever studied. The people who look disciplined from the outside have almost always just engineered fewer decisions for themselves to make in the first place. So here's what to actually take from all of this. Stop treating your 9 p.m. failures as proof that something is broken in you. They're not a character verdict. They're data about your environment showing you exactly where the friction is missing. The question was never, how do I get more willpower? It was always, what decision can I make once today while I have the clarity to make it well, so that tired, hungry, tempted future, you doesn't have to make it at all. You've spent years telling yourself you just need more willpower. What you actually needed was a system smart enough that willpower was never the thing you had to rely on at all.